Welcome to Get the Scoop with Smirks podcast. I'm Nick Erker, and today with me is Donnie Edson. In honor of National Coconut Day, which takes place on June 26th, we're going to talk in depth about coconut. First off, we'd like to thank our friends at the Coconut Coalition of the Americas for making the National Coconut Day possible, which started back in 2019. Coconuts are an incredibly versatile and diverse crop and definitely are something that should be celebrated. First, we'd like to talk in general about the origins of coconut and what its many uses are and the sustainability of the coconut industry. There's so many different coconut products we could talk about, but today we'd like to focus on the origins of coconut and some of the major product categories, desiccated coconut, oil, cream, and some of the other derivatives. We'll explore how desiccated coconut is produced, and in our product feature, we'll talk about its uses and innovation with desiccated coconut.
Let's start with what is a coconut? That's a great question, and it could be a little confusing because nut is in the name. Actually, a coconut is not a nut, but rather a drupe. So that means it's botanically classified as a fruit. Interestingly enough, coconuts are more closely related to stone fruits such as peaches, plums, and cherries. The origin of coconut in the main growing regions is in Asia. Smirks has suppliers from 4 different countries: the Philippines, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and Indonesia. The coconut industry is huge, employing millions of people globally. In 2021, the global coconut products market was nearly $4.1 billion. By 2027, it could reach $7.184 billion. Consider the tree of life for good reason. There's a long list of uses for coconut and parts of the coconut tree.
Great point, Donnie. Since the coconut market is so massive, there's tremendous demand. It is fortunate that, generally speaking, coconuts are fairly sustainable. All parts of the coconut tree can be used. One coconut tree can produce up to 180 coconuts a year. For coconut growers, the appeal of coconut is that they can sell various parts of their harvest to different industries. Here's a breakdown of what some of those many uses are for coconut. Coconut timber and shells. They're used to manufacture various building materials, such as pillars, doors, window frames, wood paneling, ceiling joists, and much more. Coconut husks and the outer shell. Some facilities use the husks to create biofuel to run their facilities. It can also be a mosquito repellent, and it is used in potting plants and even making mattresses and doormats. The shell can be used to create bowls, baskets, and also activated charcoal that is used in the cosmetic industry and can be derived from the shell.
But that's not all, Nick. There's a lot more. Coconut leaves can be made into furniture, baskets, mats, and other household items. Coconut water inside the coconut's a valued beverage for its electrolytes and used in sports drinks, juices, and more. Coconut milk is taken from the grated coconut pulp. It's used for many different applications, including non-dairy coffee creamer and other beverages, soups, and more. The coconut meat is processed to produce copra, virgin coconut oil, desiccated coconut, coconut butter, coconut flour, and coconut cream. And the coconut sap is turned into coconut sugar and coconut nectar. They're produced from the sap of the flower buds from the coconut tree. Coconut aminos are made from fermented sap, so is vinegar.
To elaborate about the sustainability of the coconut industry, Smirks is involved in the discussions about sustainability through our membership in the Coconut Coalition of the Americas. Some of the goals that the membership of the Coconut Coalition of Americas work towards are committing to protecting the environment, sustainability in the supply chain, guarding against food fraud and adulteration, nurturing farmers and their communities, ensuring sustainable production and consumption patterns, protecting and promoting ecosystems while we combat desertification and also halt and reverse land degradation, and reduce inequality within and among these countries that produce coconuts. We look forward to continuing our work on these important goals with the Coconut Coalition of the Americas.
We've touched on desiccated coconut, and that's what we'd like to highlight today. Nick and I have always been intrigued by coconut. Actually, in 2010, we were taken by the Colorado Department of Agriculture to the Philippines to sell sunflower seeds and millet. When we were there, we got to meet with some different coconut people, and so we've always had this little desire to work with coconut. It's one of the very first ingredients we started importing. We imported our first container from the Philippines in 2011, and I remember thinking, how are we going to sell all this coconut? And we worked our way right through it, and we went to buy another container and another container and another container, and it's grown from there. Mother Nature's thrown us for some loops over the years, particularly when typhoons hit the Philippines. That's the first time we really had our first taste of what do you do when the Philippines get hit with a typhoon and there's nowhere to buy coconut. That's what led us into setting up our supply chain in Sri Lanka as well. We really had no choice. There was no coconut the year we did it. And so that's why we diversified our supply chain into Sri Lanka. And we learned how valuable it was to have two supply chains. The seasons are different, the weather patterns are different, the currencies are different. Some customers prefer one origin over another origin as well. I think it's important to talk about in the Philippines. There's several areas in where the coconut's grown as well in the Philippines, with just south of Manila and the Luzon region being like the coconut triangle area. But also when you go, several hundred miles south to another island of Davao, there's several manufacturers that are based there too. Even through the years, we've seen instances where maybe one area is hit with a drought and the other area is flourishing. So the price is completely different, even though they're in the same origin. And as we got further along, we realized the importance to have even more origins set up too, because there are cases where both the Philippines and the Sri Lanka can be affected with something, and that's when we onboarded Vietnam and Indonesia. So today we do import from 4 different countries, and that actually was very valuable for us during the pandemic when maybe one country got locked down for 6 or 7 weeks or was on restrictions for how many people could be on a shift. We were able to juggle our positions around the country or around the globe and be able to keep coconut in stock for our customers as well.
So that's the importance of having multiple supply chains, and we encourage our customers to onboard suppliers from multiple countries to help eliminate these disruptions in their supply. Outside of the pandemic, this is still relevant with typhoons, as they have historically been known to damage the coconut crop in the Philippines, and different origins can have different freight prices that will affect your overall price.
All right, Nick, now let's talk about how desiccated coconut is made. In the end, it's the same result, but there's different ways that it starts out. So, in our travels around the world, we've seen a number of different ways the factories get their coconuts. When you go to Vietnam, one of the factories actually has a giant river right next to it, and barges full of coconuts pull up on the river, and they're unloaded right into the factory. In the Philippines, my favorite is to watch the jeepneys, the old vehicles that come in. They're packed full of coconuts. They're lined up forever, and they're dropping off the coconuts into the factory there. Regardless of how it's done, it all starts out with the husks removed from the coconut. The coconut shows up to the factory as a shell, just a coconut inside of a shell. The next step you have to do is get that shell off. The traditional method that they used to do was with a hatchet. They would take a hatchet and they would hit until the shell came off. There's more modern techniques now that have automated machines that you can hold the coconut up against and it'll peel the shell off of the coconut. After you've taken the shell off, you're left with a coconut that's brown. And it's still full of water. So usually they'll crack it and take the water out from the inside and send that over to the water factories. There's so much demand for coconut water now. Then they have to take this paper thin membrane, what we call the coconut paring, off of the coconut. They do that with a vegetable peeler. So they peel it off, and then they are left with the white coconut meat. The white coconut meat immediately goes into a bath of water and it heads into the factory. First thing you have to do with that is sterilize it and soften it up, and that's done by steaming it or putting it in boiling water for a period of time. It's also really important that the coconut does go through that, because once the coconut's introduced to air, the microbiologicals on it can go crazy. So you want it to go right into the hot water bath to start killing off the microbiologicals and to soften the coconut up. After it goes through this process, then it goes through the desiccation process, which is essentially cutting the coconut into whatever shape you want it to be. And the desiccation can be anything as small as smaller than a grain of rice up to a big coconut chip. It's the same machine, they just change the setting on it. After the coconut's desiccated, it goes right into the drying ovens. And these ovens are gigantic. You see, it could be 50 yards long. And it's just a slow moving belt at a high temperature. And what it's doing is taking the coconut and cooking it down to the right moisture level, killing off the microbiologicals, stabilizing the fat inside of it so the coconut lasts a long time. If they're going to toast the coconut, they're actually going to take the coconut off the drying oven and they're going to rerun it through the oven a second time. The second time, it's just the right amount of time to be able to make it so you get a toasted coconut. After the coconut comes off of there, it goes right into the final quality checks, and then it gets bagged off. It gets put into a holding area where they do all the testing for the microbiologicals, as well as the physical pieces of it that we want to make sure the coconut's good. And then once it's released from that, it ships to us in the US so we can distribute it to our customers.
At Smirks, we always strive to enhance our customer and vendor experiences, and we're always here to answer any questions that you might have. So please reach out to us about any questions you have concerning coconut or a multitude of other products that we supply. We'd love to hear from you and help you however we can.